October night compresses the strait into a narrow vein of black water. Cross-currents shear the wakes, and the destroyers move in a clean line ahead, white ghosts on their own foam. Saito stands with binoculars tight to the brow, counting bearings like prayer beads, 3 points off starboard 2 to port 0 drift on the masthead light. He keeps the number that matters closest, X, the seconds between first sight and first command. If X stays small, the world stays orderly. The ship speaks in metronomes, engine room telegraph ticks, gyro hum threads the bridge like a low chant. Leather creaks under the captain's gloves when he shifts a degree against the current. Diesel and brine mingle in the cold air until the smell feels like paint on the lungs. Saito's breath rides a 4-count held on the turn, released on the correction. He tells himself that the ocean is a ledger, and he is here to keep it honest. Dark to port fattens into something thicker than weather, a smear more absence than shape. He narrows the glass and trims his breath to a whisper. The bearings hold, then slip, then hold again, cross-current playing tricks with distance. Never cede the night, he thinks, not as bravado, but as a rule that keeps hands steady and voices level. The water answers with violence. A stitched 50 cal rip lashes across the black sound, arriving like thrown gravel that becomes thunder at the hull. A slab of wake erupts ahead, white ladder kicked crooked by invisible speed. The neat columns in his ledger tilt. Someone on the wing mutters a course, another repeats a lamp code, and both die under the next short, brutal sentence of fire. A memory cuts in an allied fragment passed along with contempt, and then in private read twice. Small, fast, replaceable beats, perfect, slow to deploy. He had filed it with rumours and excuses. Now the line returns with a weight it did not have in daylight. He feels the seconds stretching, each one worth more than rank, more than ritual, more than clean pages in the log. He raises the binoculars, finds only wake and shadow, and understands the new arithmetic purity pauses availability does not. They called them plywood boats, as if a material could be an insult that solved the night. The word sounded clean in a wardroom, dismissive, easy to repeat. Plywood burns plywood, splinters. Plywood is not a warship. Saito had laughed once because the joke landed well among men who measured worth by thickness of plate and the gloss on brass. Out here, the joke breaks its teeth. Plywood floats shallow. Shallow means creeks and reef skirts and channels the charts barely respect. Shallow lets a hull step over a sand ridge that would stop a destroyer dead kiss along mangrove edges, thread between markers that look like moonlight. The draft is a permission slip the ocean signs in secret, not for the pretty ships but for the quick ones. You cannot drill that advantage away with cleaner formations. You cannot command a reef to respect your line ahead. Engines decide the rest. Not one great cathedral of reciprocating iron buried deep and sacred, but multiple hungry blocks bolted for speed and service. Modular, pull a 6-cylinder bank and slot a healthy one done. A motormac with a wrench and a tempo can put a heartbeat back into a hull before a staff officer finishes a condemnation memo. Saito pictures his own engine deck, sacred space paperwork, parts that travel in crates stamped like sermons. On the PTs, the engines are not a shrine, they are a rhythm line. If a power plant fails at dusk, a replacement sings by midnight. Availability lives in the small hours. The word cheap used to mean inferior. Then the Americans taught it a second, meaning numerous. A boat that costs less becomes a promise that there will be another and another and another, each with enough speed to make minutes elastic. Craft that arrive faster than reports can be filed don't need polish. They need fuel, and a crew that can count to 10 while the wake straightens. The ledger Saito keeps in his head hours spares. Inspections does not balance against a fleet that treats loss as a scheduling problem. They sneered at the radar too. A stubby set, not the great lattice, a battleship carries, not the proud tower that photographs well. But the stub throws a thin hand into the dark and finds a smudge of return, a suggestion of movement where the eye would swear the world is empty. The bearing is not pretty, it is good enough. Good enough is a weapon when the trigger lives inside seconds. It does not matter that the plot is ragged at the edges. It matters that the set whispers there is something there. Turn 5 degrees now. Your first shot belongs to you. Map work in the briefing room claims straight lines and careful arrows. The night writes different geometry. Fan-in small hulls converge on a lane as if pulled by a magnet you cannot sense. Fan-out, they scatter after a strike, each choosing water that punishes pursuit, each accepting that separation is survival, not disgrace. Saito sees the pattern only after it is already memory. Plotting boards are honest with ink and cruel with time. By the moment the pencil draws a tidy vector, the enemy has already stepped to the next square. The first time the lamp code fails, his voice tightens. He means to keep it level the way instructors teach vowels round and consonants clipped. The syllables snag on his teeth. Somewhere below, a petty officer repeats the last full word, and the rest dies in the thrum of the shafts. That is how emotion shows itself in men who believe in drill, not in shouting, but in a half-tone drop in a breath that arrives late in a throat that needs clearing at the worst second. The first stitched burst snaps the pupils wide. Light is not needed to see. The body learns from the sound. The mind, trained to separate engine beat from C-slap from chain rattle, loses a fraction, and that fraction is where the enemy lives. Once, twice, the short sentences of fire land on the water commas of spray that rewrite punctuation in the brain. A lookout who could recite a horizon like poetry 10 minutes earlier now blinks pool water out of memory. He will swear he never took his eyes off the sector. The sector is no longer where he thought. Ritual is a comfort until it is a trap. Line ahead is beautiful in photographs and exercise reports. It makes responsibility clean. Who failed? The man who left the line, but the night does not grade on beauty. A formation that turns every hull into a predictable line is a prayer answered by a torpedo that does not respect prayers. To split is to invite censure. To hold is to invite a spread. Discipline in the wrong geometry becomes a long way of saying please. The industrial divorce shows itself in the gaps between thought and action. On one side, every system is a cathedral that must be tended by believers. On the other systems are kits open, the crate bolt, the thing run, the test go. The destroyer's lamp speaks perfect code to ships that share its faith. The PT's radio speaks enough to coordinate speed and bearing, and to promise that if this hull dies, there is another 20 minutes behind it, and another 40 after that. The difference is not courage. It is time accounting. He remembers the laugh plywood. He tastes it now bitter as if the word itself has turned on him. Plywood means the boat does not sink the way a proper ship sinks it, skitters, shudders, burns quick, or vanishes into chop you cannot chase. Plywood means repairs you can make with tools that fit in a hand, instead of invoking a yard and a schedule. Plywood means a captain can afford to risk a hull, because the loss is not a chapter in a national ledger. It is a line item in a knight's plan. Saito tries to reclaim control with numbers. Bearing 310, range uncertain, rate of change unacceptable. He orders illumination, a fair, proud answer. The sea returns glare in all the wrong places and turns the PT hulls into shadows that flow around the light as if light itself were slow. The men at the guns know their arcs, their elevation tables, their drills. Their muscles have memorized the solution. What fails them is not will. It is that the problem changes shape faster than muscle can remember. The fan-in returns. 2 smears from starboard, a third near a port, a fourth he cannot place, begins to exist in the way the wake to leeward behaves. He hears the captain inhale to speak, and for a beat no order comes. The body waits for ritual to rescue it. Ritual does not arrive. The chart glows with fine lines that do not bend fast enough. He catalogues the betrayals, a code that needs more seconds than the fight will lend, a formation that asks for purity when the enemy sells mud and buys speed, an engine doctrine that worships longevity when the contest is settled by who can be present again first. None of these are tactical mistakes he admits in the quiet part of his mind. They are choices made far from the straight by men who build temples to machines and then demand worship in return. He steadies his breath and lowers the glass. Between beats, he sees the truth he has refused. Perfection is a ritual that spends seconds like coins in a wishing well. The enemy brings a bucket and a rope. They do not ask the water for a miracle. They draw. The next burst lands closer, a hard slap that rattles the compass repeater and draws a curse from a sailor who never curses. Saito keeps his tone flat when he repeats the bearing, but the bridge feels the half degree of tremble in the air. The eye fetches back to the same patch of dark twice in quick succession, an old trick of fear that narrows a world full of threats to one comfortable lie. He does not say the word failure. He does not need to. The ship answers for him. Delays between commands lengthen. Confirmations overlap. A second lamp message dies halfway through as the operator chooses to duck instead of finish a sentence. Men trained to move in perfect timing discover that timing itself is the enemy. Plywood radar stub, modular engines, shallow draft, none of it is elegant. All of it climbs the same staircase seconds. How fast to find, how fast to turn, how fast to replace, how fast to return. His doctrine measures dignity. The other side measures returns per hour. He feels the heat under the collar again. He wants to blame a lookout, a helmsman, a junior who failed a drill. The thought withers. This is not a bad tactic punished by fate. This is a philosophy running out of time in a place where time is the only currency that spends. Ritual cannot buy a single second back, and the ledger he has kept so carefully begins to fill with marks that are not numbers, but noises. The thrum of engines that never wait, the hiss of a torpedo that does not care about pride, the clipped efficient radio of an enemy that has. Divorced feeling from function and married function to speed. He sets his jaw and does the only thing a believer can do when the temple roof cracks. He keeps counting because numbers still tell the truth, even when truth does not flatter. Seconds between sight and shot. Seconds between shot and correction. Seconds between correction and next threat. The count does not lie. The count does not love him. The count belongs to the side that made it their doctrine. Signal lamps snap to the same code as if one hand held them all. The destroyer ahead throws a white column up the night. Ours answers a beat later. Then the next in line, a ladder of light stitching the straight. Crossfire illumination blooms clean and hard, a geometry lesson hammered into seawater. Shadows flee to the edges. Wake lines stand out like chalk strokes. Men square their shoulders because order has a sound, and it sounds like this commands that arrive in the ear already half satisfied by the scene result. For a breath, the world bows. A low silhouette that had been a rumor becomes a shape. Tanaka's battery walks a measured arc just abaft the smear. Water leaps in tight, even signatures. Another battery sinks in angle, set off our fall of shot, and the two patterns cross into a tidy net. Someone on the wing lets a clipped laugh escape the involuntary sound of a drill coming true under fire. Bearings feed the plot table. The captain's palm hovers over the rail fingers, tapping the rate of change into his skin. We have them. The first answer from the dark is not a hit. It is subtraction. The target breaks into twins. The bow wave we thought we owned produces a brother to starboard, then a third to port. The light we threw to reveal becomes the very glare that hides. The far boat throws spray with deliberate malice, fat rooster tails that catch our lamps and read like hulls. Sato calls one bearing, then corrects the correction. The pencil scratches a vector so elegant it might have been prepared at noon, and in the time it takes to lift the tip off the cellulose, the line is wrong. Fan in. 3 angles arrive together, not marching, not saluting, just existing, sudden, true, impertinent. The nearest wake takes our glare and turns it into a blindfold. The second comes in from the quarter we left to the ship, astern, trusting the line. The third simply is there, as if the sea had kept it under the surface like a card and palmed it onto the table when our eyes tracked the first 2. Kubo opens his mouth to pass a correction, and the consonant dies against his teeth. He swallows, tries again, stumbles over a number he has said 10,000 times, and the radio man repeats the stumble as if it were part of the message. Illumination holds perfect and traitorous. The beams show water's truth, and water's truth is that speed edits visibility. Every sweep of spray writes a decoy. Every torpedo wake copies itself in reflections until the gun sights are reading ghosts. Tanaka's hands are sure until they are not. Elevation ticks 1 notch too bold, then overshoots again as he hunts a smear that refuses to stay at a single range long enough to deserve math. The gunnery officer calls for a half degree of check fire to reset timing, and in that half degree, the nearest hull becomes a memory. We swing a searchlight to cut the angle. The beam nails a white dagger of foam, bright as a street lamp on rain, and the crew on the wing cheers because the human body loves a simple picture. The helm takes a clean order. The bow obliges with a clean answer. The picture breaks. The dagger wasn't a bow. It was the insult of a healthy engine playing in our glare. The real hull hopped to the side we left dark when we chased the pretty thing. Saito senses the trap by the way the shadow where the hull is not refuses to behave like absence. He blinks hard. Salt sweat crawls under the rim of the right lens. The left eye stays sharp, and the world splits into two unsympathetic stories. Metric Y. The seconds between sight and a solution shrinks the wrong way. We are not faster. The world is faster. Bearings change quicker than the throat can shape the numbers. Confirmations step on commands. The next order begins before the last acknowledgement, and both lose a syllable that turns trueness into almost. The repeater clacks with the steady heart of a machine that doesn't care that men are falling half a beat behind. Saito feels the ship as a set of lungs that cannot agree on when to breathe. A torpedo track writes itself across the bow like a pale tendon. It passes harmlessly because chance decides to be kind on the first throw. The voice at the torpedo director coolly reports a near solution gained and lost, every word even, and Saito hears the lie of composure in the way the vowels tighten. Lights bloom again as another ship adds to the crossfire. This time the glare rearms the decoys. Wake ghosts multiply into a choir. We have manufactured a hall of mirrors and invited ourselves to get lost in it. The destroyer, two back from the lead, pulls a turn that would have won a prize in a regatta. Beautiful, useless. It places her exactly where the next false target is strongest. Tanaka curses a clipped mutter, intended for his own ears that the gun crew hears anyway, and rams the elevation up a hair to catch the angle. The hair is too much. Tracers walk past the truth with meticulous discipline. Saito wants to subtract variables. He orders a brief extinguish, a momentary shoulder of darkness to let eyes reset. The night surges in gratefully and carries a risk like a knife in the sleeve. In the sudden blue-black, the radar stub on the enemy keeps whispering. The enemy does not blink. We do. A second, stitched burst, chews up water just off the bridge wing, a denunciation in short syllables that makes men lower heads by reflex. Kubo's third try at the code breaks into two messages smashed together. The lamp throws a stutter that means nothing to anyone and wastes a second teaching everyone that it means nothing. Discipline demands that we hold the line that our beauty remain beautiful under punishment. Beauty exacts its tax. The boat on the starboard quarter needles in and out of the glare with cruel timing, presenting a bow here, a stern there, never the broadside that would let tables sing their numbers in triumph. A second target steals across the port bow, daring a split of fire that our doctrine forbids unless ordered, because split fire is a serpent with two heads that bite their own tails as often as the enemy. The order to split is a pebble under Saito's tongue. He does not spit it yet. He tastes stone. He counts aloud without meaning to the way he did as a cadet when the stopwatch proved whether he saw or merely believed. 1 for sight, 2 for aim, 3 for shot, 4 for correction, 5 for next sight. By 6, the sea has changed the scene. By 7, the enemy has written an answer. By 8, the math we love belongs to yesterday. He keeps counting anyway, grimly faithful, because numbers are the last polite company in a room that has become rude. The fan-out begins as soon as we commit to a corridor. They split like quicksilver. One runs straight into the shallow. We do not dare enter counting on our draft to keep our honor leashed. Another swings behind our tail and paints our wake with a line of muzzle flickers that are more insult than harm, but bleed rhythm away. A third throws a puff of smoke against the light. That puff becomes a boat in the mind of a gunner on our aft mount, and metal goes where nothing is. The night learns our timing and returns it to us bent. Tanaka calls for new ranging, and the words come out uneven, as if one lip were numb. He still hits commands with the correct cadence. The men still answer with textbook echoes. The shells still leave the barrels with the same speed they did at dawn. The difference lives in the half-beats between. Saito wipes his brow. The gesture is quick, angry, and leaves a thin line of salt across the ridge of his eye that burns like a brand. He blinks once, twice too hard. The glass shifts. The smear becomes a double. He corrects, and knows he has lost a second he cannot buy back. A hull finally steps into the honest light of our own beam, close enough that even lies must wait their turn. We catch it with a clean traverse, and the tracers spike water around its flank. The hit we want does not announce itself. The boat refuses to play the role we wrote for it in the manual. It drops back into shadow, and its friend appears where we had not paid attention, because attention is a limited ration. Saito hears the helmsman ask for a repeat of the last order as proper as a school recitation, and he hates the correctness because it proves the machine of men is running exactly as designed, while the design itself falls behind reality. The trap is not a single thrust. It is a saturation of the decision loop. Every axis added takes a slice from thinking. Every decoy consumes a morsel of vision. Every necessary confirmation chews a syllable off the command to come. Kubo's stammer is no longer a stammer. It is the audible measure of a brain allotted fewer cycles than the night demands. Tanaka's over-elevate becomes a polite bow to velocity we cannot match. Saito's blink is the body admitting that salt and fear are solvents for precision. A torpedo hisses past to port far enough that only the lookouts on that wing see its brief pale scar close enough that their voices climb a note when they report. The captain stands very still. Stillness is how you hold a ship together when the urge to chase the last thing you saw is a muscle twitch running through steel. He issues an order that keeps us in doctrine. The order is fine. It is late. Late lives inside the same second as wrong. We seize at certainty. We throw starshell to rake the water with honest day. The false targets multiply under the white bloom. Wake ghosts gain edges. Spray takes on hull shapes. Shadows perform a play one step faster than our understudy can learn the lines. Somewhere off our bow, a PT skipper listens to his stub set, coffer bearing, and grins because it is good enough. He does not need a cathedral plot. He needs a number that gets him to a first shot before our lamp can finish apologizing for the last message. There is a brief, foolish temptation to turn off everything and listen with the body the old sailor's trick of letting sound find what sight cannot. The engines make too much law for that to work on a destroyer. We are committed to being heard. They are committed to being present. Presence wins in the arithmetic of seconds. Another illumination cycle. Another precise lattice on the black. We are still excellent at making lines. The enemy is excellent at stepping between them. Saito recognizes the shape of the loss now, not men failing drills, but drills failing men. The discipline he has loved all his career is exacting its toll at the wrong cash window. Every perfect exchange costs a breath. At the edge of the bridge, he hears a boy clear his throat 3 times in 8 seconds. That is not a habit. That is the metronome of fear syncing with the metronome of the ship. A bow wave slides in where there should be nothing. Tanaka tries to cheat the sight by leading more than tables advise. It is a clever sin, and it almost pays. Almost does not bleed. The next burst slaps the water too close to the forward mount. Steel rings. A man swears he never swears. Kubo finds his voice only by narrowing it to monosyllables, as if language were the thing making him slow. Each clean word saves the fraction that the flood steals back. We could admire the choreography if it were not killing our time. Vectors cross. Decoys bloom. Angles arrive where angles should not be. We are made to choose between pride and physics, and while the argument continues in the chest, the second hand moves. The arithmetic of the night does not pause for our dignity. The longer the lamps burn, the richer the enemy's sea becomes with lies. The longer we hold line ahead, the more carefully we place ourselves, where their small, cheap, swift hulls can buy choice. Saito presses the binoculars hard enough to leave crescents on the brow, and inhales through his teeth to slow himself. He knows the rule. Keep the cadence, hold the file, trust the geometry. He also knows now that the geometry has changed frames while we admired our straight lines. The map will be handsome in the morning. The night is not a morning. When the next command comes out of his mouth, the tone is perfect, and the content is right, and the ship obeys with the eagerness of a trained animal. It does not matter. The bearing has already shifted by the time the helm answers, and the answer lands with the soft thud of a good decision made for a world that existed 1 heartbeat ago. He does not need to be told that this is the shape of defeat. It is disciplined. It is graceful. It is without dividend. The night tightens like a band around the temples. Then the band snaps. Short, brutal sentences of fire rake the water so close they sound damp as if the sea itself were coughing. Muzzle slaps overlap one from starboard quarter one ahead and lower third from nowhere that turns out to be exactly where the bow is trying to point. The stitched rip returns with a vengeful memory, each burst shaving pieces from the seconds Saito has left to think. The bridge flinches as a single animal. Heads duck then rise because men trained to keep cadence will stand inside the beating rather than fall out of step. The compass repeater jitters a mosquito buzz under the racket. A pale tendon glides across the bow torpedo wake an ice vein in black water. It threads so true along our path that for a heartbeat the ship seems to be following it. Saito's chest climbs 2 steps at once, heart knocking against ribs with a hard wooden sound that finds his throat. His breath breaks into pieces. He has to pin each piece down with will, stitch them back together into something that can carry words. He tastes salt and copper at the back of his mouth. The oath he has carried since his first night watch tries to stand up inside him, hold the file, keep the line clean, never cede the night to chaos. It feels holy. It feels wrong. The torpedo's pale scar is already past, but another wake is the kind you do not see a bearable lie that says the second fish is late because the first was close. The sea loves twin tricks. Waiting for the second is a faith that kills. Shock returns again, nearer overlapping. 50 seconds, writing staccato verdicts that drive through spray and into steel fittings with a tinny, humiliating ring. Kubo's mouth opens, and the lamp code that should be a river becomes a string of beads dropped downstairs. Tanaka rides elevation like a horse that keeps changing gaits under him. The captain's hand remains still on the rail, and stillness reads as courage until it reads as delay. Saito hears his own name somewhere behind him, not called, but remembered an old instructor's voice from a bright classroom where night did not exist. He does not look back. The seconds are burning in front of the bow. Another white scar begins to write itself across the lane we own by Doctrine. He does not let it finish the sentence. The decision forms in a blistering clarity that empties the body for it to pass through geometry, is a god that has turned its face. Ritual is a rope that drags. Purity is a picture that kills. He drops his tone half a step and finds a voice he has never used on a bridge, low, dry, cutting air instead of riding it. Independent maneuver. Now. The words land with the weight of a mutiny and the clean click of a valve. There is a small, shocked pause from the brass and leather around him, a gap you could slip a coin through. Then the helmsman answers on instinct shaped by survival, not ceremony. The bow swings like a shoulder, snapping free inside a tight coat. The line astern tears honest and ugly. Somewhere out there, a captain curses him by name, and Saito takes the blasphemy because it buys a second he can hold in his palm. Breath comes in fragments he cannot smooth. He leans into the rail to steady the pieces, and forces the next order through a narrower pipe. Port 2 to 5 keep the wake small. The half tone holds. The bridge hears it and obeys because all creatures obey the voice that sounds like it came from the spine. The ship rolls into the turn. The sea offers a new face of black. The first torpedo wake slides off the bow with inches to spare a ghost missing a throat to bite. The lamps go dark without permission, then back on with a wobble. He does not rebuke it. Light was a virtue 5 minutes ago. Light is a weapon for the wrong side now. Kill the glare. Radar bearings only. It is a heresy wrapped in a sentence. It is also the only sentence that belongs in this decade of seconds. Even men who do not trust the stub set have learned the taste of its whispers tonight. They obey because the sea has taught them the cost of seeing too much of the wrong things. The hull shudders as the forward mount answers a smear that crosses the new bow like a dare. Tracers catch spray. The spray applauds. The boat that made the dare is already elsewhere. The independent swing buys us out of the corridor their fan-in had built. It also buys shame. Line ahead breaks behind. He feels it tear in the gut, a fabric he has pressed and folded for years, coming apart with a rip the sea will not sew. Somewhere a signalman will write this as deviation. He will sign it. He will accept the arithmetic. Speed up. The engines answer with a deeper note, the kind that shortens options and lengthens odds. On a destroyer, speed is dignity. Tonight it is also escape. He senses where the next muzzle slap wants to be close on the starboard bow, if we hold so he doesn't. Starboard 10. Bring the quarter merc onto them. He hears his own breath catch between star and board, as if the body tried to hold command and air at once and had to choose. Kubo finds a single word he can say without dropping it. Aye. It is enough. Tanaka's voice comes back tight, but even on, the captain's head turns a fraction. Saito meets the look and sees not anger but the ledger casualty possible if we keep purity, dishonor certain if we do not. He nods once, not up or down, but forward. The captain nods back, a small legal act that makes the sin collective and survivable. The ship's new path cuts across the angles that had been reading our rhythm. The nearest PT overshoots into our old corridor where our absence is waiting. A burst hammers where our bridge used to be, and finds only air that still remembers our shape. A second torpedo wake slants in from port at a geometry meant for the man we were 2 breaths ago. It misses with a malice that tastes like mercy. The third smear stabs toward our stern and loses the thread as our wake doubles and shivers in the turn. The enemy had been playing our timing. We have refused to keep time. The next orders come shorter, each the length of a breath he can afford, not a sermon he cannot. Hold, ease, cut lamp, guns track by sound, not glare. He expects a question and gets none. Men know when the kind voice is gone and the necessary one has taken the stage. His heart drives the ribs again, fast enough that each thud seems to push a syllable out. He uses the pressure to keep the half-tone firm lower than fear higher than defeat. Shame arrives with the precision of a drill he cannot forget. It catalogues what he has broken: formation, purity code, discipline, the quiet certainty that order itself is shield. He does not look at the wake behind him where the line should be. He looks ahead because the living are there. The shame is not a courtroom. It is a cost. He pays it coin by coin, seconds into the palm. A fresh, stitched rip tears the water to starboard. We are already somewhere else. He feels a childish urge to laugh and crushes it with the heel of his teeth. This is not victory. This is survival bargaining. The radar stub coughs a bearing. The number is ragged and good enough. He steers off it as if it were a star. The predictor off the forward mount stops chasing ghosts and begins to aim at where engines sound angry rather than where light is pretty. Independent maneuver for the screen, he says deeper still. It is too much to ask, and exactly what must be asked. For a heartbeat he hears only the ship itself, the great animal breathing. Then, one by one, acknowledgements from astern, some crisp, some swallowed in static, some not at all. Even the silence means something useful now. Silence is a ship that chose to move instead of talk. He will write it clean later. He is collecting seconds now, because seconds are a currency that buys the morning. A flare tumbles somewhere starboard and burns like a small sun. He refuses it. The bridge flinches and looks away, together trained eyes betraying their owner with reflex. He keeps his glass where the flare is not, and drags the world back to measures that matter: engine beat, muzzle, rhythm, the whisper of bearing from the set that is not a cathedral, and therefore is honest. The hull obeys the smaller geometry of survival. The big, beautiful figure of line ahead can go hang over the horizon. The bow kisses a line of chop that belonged to the track of the first wake and rides over it. Air cools the sweat under his collar and raises gooseflesh he had not had time to feel. He inhales to the belly and is surprised the breath holds. The spike in his veins slows by a notch, still high, still jagged, but not breaking him into pieces. He speaks to test whether his mouth has returned to him. Steady. The word is level. The tone stays half a step lower than his habit. He keeps it there. The bridge needs gravity. Somewhere aft, a gunner laughs one hard single note, the body's rebellion against doom. The sound is obscene and perfect. We are not dead. We are not done. He feels the oath he has broken settle back into him, not to demand restitution, but to be rewritten. Never cede the night he thinks and hears the next clause, without choosing it to ritual. Cede it to what works. The PTs test the new shape of us, probing for the music we used to play. We do not keep the beat. We answer in crooked measures. A burst where we would have been answered by a turn that leaves no echo. A torpedo promised to an alignment that no longer exists, ages into a pale line behind us, harmless and embarrassed. The lamp that once would have insisted on code gives a single necessary blink that means nothing in books and everything to a ship that needs room to live. He looks once into the dark without glass and lets the salt sting the eye until it tears clean. The tear runs cold and tastes of iron. He wipes it with the knuckle and finds that the small tremor has left his hand. The ship feels lighter underfoot, like a wrestler who has stopped posing and started fighting. The enemy will adapt, he knows. This is not the end. It is the refusal to be ended by a picture. Resume by intent, he says, borrowing a phrase he has heard only in drills meant to teach initiative and then forgotten in peacetime ritual. Men around him nod, not certain but willing. The captain breathes a single slow breath that reads as permission and trust, and the faintest trace of grief for a doctrine that served them until it did not. The sea opens a lane of honest dark that no lamp owns. He points the bow into it and takes what the night gives. The shame is his. The seconds are his. He chooses. Then he acts. Dawn does not arrive here. It seeps. The black thins to a bruised grey that fails to comfort. Wind falls away until the sea sounds like breath through cloth. The bridge is a hush of soft tasks. Salt wiped from metal empty shells kicked into a corner. A lamp shutter eased back and forth to remind the hand it still works. Smoke from somewhere aft makes a faint tannin in the air. No one speaks above necessity. Even necessity knows to lower its voice. Saito stands at the break in the wing, one glove off. The deck sweats underfoot as if the ship were cooling after fever. A spent sleeve lies against the scupper light as junk and heavy as proof. He takes it up. The rim is chewed to an ugly flower jagged where the extractor tore it free in hurry. He rolls it between thumb and forefinger. Oil, brass, carbon. The same three smells he has known all his life. Yet here after last night they are less tools than verdict. He presses the edge into the pad of his thumb until it marks a crescent. The pain is easy. The thought is not. A crate rocks against the bulkhead, wedged by a coil of line. It has ridden aboard since a transfer 2 nights ago, forgotten because it did not belong in any proud place. The stenciling is American, seen through water. The paint has bled into the grain until letters are ghosts of themselves. He can still read enough cartridge Carl. 504 belts M2 linked. Below that a code a clerk once cared about. The lid edge shows where some hand pried and hammered. The work was swift, not reverent. The wood is rough, unvarnished, practical. He thinks of the hold beneath him of his own stores in tight, lacquered order, each item waiting for a signature more than a hand. He strips the glove fully and lays his fingers on the stencil. The wood feels like a dock plank, workman's timber, not altar. He imagines the path, a truck bed, a pier, a deck, not much higher off the water than a man's chest, fast hands passing weight from hand to hand, no one pausing to admire the dignity of anything. A belt lifted, a feed tray slammed, a gun awake again, before blame has time to find a target. The logic is simple enough to be cruel. Keep the gun speaking. If it breaks, replace the gun. If the boat breaks, replace the boat. If the man breaks, there is another man who can count to 10 while his wake straightens. He turns the sleeve in the dawn and hears, as if from a long corridor, the clean voice he learned by line-ahead code, integrity, range, discipline. He could say the sentences now, and the ship would stand slightly taller hearing them. He does not say them. He says the one line that has the courage to be plain. They win by seconds. No one answers. The words are not a confession to men. They are a receipt handed to time. He sets the sleeve on the sill and lines it with the scar on his thumb as if to measure whether the pain fits the truth. It does not. Pain is small. The truth is a country. He counts not aloud, not with pride, just to know. How many first shots did they create while we were still naming the first surprise fire events per minute? He has never put those words together. Now, they will not unjoin. He remembers the cadence, burst correction, burst silence. That is not silence because engines speak, then another burst. 1 minute is not a clock face. It is a stadium where shots are tickets. They printed more tickets than we printed rules. He thinks about hulls more than boats. Replacement ready. It sounds like yard language, a chief's boast, a quartermaster's promise. Last night, it was a living thing. A hull goes out. Another hull takes its place before the story the first one started can end. The sea cannot be emptied if the shore is a factory. His own shore builds cathedrals perfect, heavy, slow to forgive. Theirs builds instruments rough fast, designed to be played hard and replaced before the sound fades. He runs the pad of his thumb along the crate edge until a splinter catches like a small tooth. He does not pick it out. He wants the reminder, when the day fully reveals the wreck of his certainties. Behind him, someone coughs carefully, an old man's cough inside a young throat, and he hears the discipline in it, the way the sound is pulled inward, so it does not carry doubt across the deck. Discipline survived the night. Its prize is that we are still here to feel how little it bought. The captain steps to the wing, says nothing, and looks where he looks. Two shapes on the horizon play at being islands. They are not. Smoke lifts from one in a ribbon that pretends the wind is stronger than it is. Somewhere between us and them lies a spare geometry of last night already drying into something neat the daylight will lie about. He wants to hate the light for that. He settles for distrusting it. We held as we were taught, the captain says, voice level. The words are not comfort and not accusation. They are a line in a log written with a steady hand. We held Saito answers equal and inadequate. He keeps his eyes on the crate because the wood tells fewer lies than the sky. We also lived because we stopped holding. A long wave runs under the hull and comes out the other side as if the ship were a reef. The sleeve rattles on the sill, a dry insect noise. He picks it up again. The metal has cooled. It steals warmth from his skin. He wants to throw it over but does not. This is not a thing to discard. It is a tool you keep to remember what work looks like in a world that refuses altars. He begins to sort the night into two columns that are not in any manual. In one column, purity cadence codes that speak perfectly to their own kind, reports that arrive with a grammar the Admiralty will admire. In the other seconds, crude fixes cheap hulls that are cheap because they are numerous, never mind what men call them. He does not write the columns down. He feels them the way a helmsman feels a cross-current in the wrist. A petty officer brings up a mug enamel chipped steam-thin. Saito drinks without tasting. He is thirsty for a number. It comes when he stops looking for dignity and listens for engine beat beyond his own. Last night, in any 60 seconds that mattered how many enemy guns spoke first. He keeps the number conservative because lies make people brave at the wrong times. The answer makes him tired. He folds it into a sentence that he will later pretend is a line from a report, not the hard thing it is. They created more first shots per minute than we could resolve, he says to the crate. And they brought more hulls to the hour than we could discourage. He looks at his hands at the salt line, drying at the base of each finger like a pale ring left by a glass. The body tallies even when the mind refuses, spikes in the vein when shock returned, breath cut into pieces when the wake wrote its pale line at the bow. The voice he had to lower to make orders slide. He wonders briefly if shame has weight. It does. It sits in the shoulders like a wet coat. He carries it because setting it down would be the same as saying the night meant nothing. It meant the most. He turns to the captain, expecting a reprimand, shaped like a question. He finds instead a man who has done his own columns and arrived at something close to his. The captain places 2 fingers on the crate as if touching a map. We will be asked what failed, he says. We will be expected to say a lookout, a code, a man. Saito nods. We can say a philosophy failed faster. The captain's mouth tightens, not in anger, in care. Say the thing that changes the next night. Leave righteousness for speeches. So he tallies plain. Surprise fire events per minute, he says. A number we never bothered to own. It owns us if we ignore it. And replacement-ready hulls per night sector. If there are 3 hours of contact, they can bring a new presence into each quarter hour without gasping. We cannot. The wind shifts a little, and with it a faint, sweet rot from the mangroves. The smell of land sneaks onto a deck that pretends to be pure sea. He takes it as a small lecture from the world purity is a picture we hold against the tide. The tide erases pictures with patience. Below, someone drags a hose and the couplings ring against iron. Kubo's voice, steady again, recites inventory with the care of a penitent, making sure to name every small sin. Tanaka checks elevation gears by feel, click by click, each click a small apology to a weapon he handled worse than he liked. Men do what men do after they learn something that cannot go back into the dark. They clean, they count, they promise nothing out loud. Saito closes his fingers around the sleeve and slips it into his pocket. He wants the edge against his thigh when he walks the deck, later wants it to remind him that an extractor's violence is simply a machine refusing to be slow. He taps the crate with 2 knuckles. The sound is dull and honest. He imagines the boat, those belts fed, low, ugly, to a parade perfect, to a night that rewards speed. He wants to hate it. He cannot. The boat did not insult him. The idea behind it did. He breathes and finds that the breath is whole again, not chopped. He speaks in the same tone he used when he ordered the sin that saved them, lower than habit, clean of ornament. Write this, he says softly, as much to himself as to the air. Reduce seconds between sight and shot. Reduce seconds between loss and presence. Stop asking beauty to pay debts. Speed collects. He watches the horizon try to pretend the night was a story and not a fact. The pretense fails. Scraps of smoke hold on where truth is heavier than light. He knows the report will need numbers that bathe well under lamps. He will give them. He will also keep 2 that do not flatter first shots per minute against us, fresh hulls per hour against us. If those 2 fall, the others will have a chance to matter. If they do not, no speech will save another watch. The captain picks up the mug Saito forgot he was holding and sips. We will be accused of abandoning form, he says. We abandoned a picture, Saito answers. We kept the ship. He feels for the sleeve in his pocket, reassured by its small, mean truth. The crate knocks once as the hull rolls a modest sound like a clerk clearing his throat before reading a list. He finds that he can live with the sound. It says, without pride, that war is a business of seconds and stock, and that a doctrine that spends hours to purchase 1 clean minute is a doctrine that will starve. He looks down into the water at the ship's side. The wake is less white now, less proud, a whisper instead of a sermon. He prefers it. A whisper demands that you lean in to hear that you respect what you cannot prettify. He leans, hears the low talk of engines that woke for him when he asked not for honor for life. He can admit this without losing himself. Last night we learned our prayers were too long. He straightens. The day is almost here. The ledger in his head is stark relieved of ornament. 2 lines, bolded by experience. Make more first shots per minute than they can resolve. Bring more hulls to the hour than they can discourage. Everything else is ceremony. He will keep ceremony because men need it. He will never again mistake it for armor. The report goes in clean, stripped of pride. Saito writes as if each sentence were a switch he refuses to gild. Night belongs to the side that can create more first shots per hour than we can resolve. He puts that line early so no one can mistake poetry for policy. He adds the arithmetic in plain words. First shot availability per hour of contact equals the sum of radar Q acceleration to attack speed and gun-up time, all divided by the length of the decision loop. Shorten the numerator's pieces, crush the denominator. That is the war the darkness actually fights. He records how breath behaved when the doctrine failed spikes, when stitched bursts arrived, fragments when the pale wake threaded the bow, the half-tone drop that made orders cut through panic. He does not apologize for the independent maneuver. He notes the outcome the ship lived. The formation did not. He writes the cost without embroidery, and the gain without triumph. If the next watch must choose, let them choose with numbers that bite. He asks for changes small enough to survive a clerk, and large enough to matter in water. Shutter discipline inverted, kill glare by default, open only to punish. Radar stub priority raised above the comfort of optics. Training cadence rewritten for seconds, first notice to first shot, measured, graphed, rehearsed, until hands move before pride wakes. Spare engines forward staged, not reverenced in the rear. Replacement hulls scheduled to the hour, not the week. Do not praise elegance if it wastes even 1 second of contact. He adds a note on speech. Codes that read beautifully in a conference die under shock. Short words save time and carry farther. Orders should fit inside a breath. A doctrine that cannot be spoken between 2 heartbeats has already priced itself out of the fight it claims to master. He closes the ledger of shame the only honest way, by accepting its lesson and refusing its weight. The oath he broke last night becomes a rule he can keep without lying to the sea. Never cede the night to ritual. Give it to what works. The men will keep ceremony because men need it. The ship will keep seconds because ships live on them. He looks out over the lane that almost took them, and sees it differently, now less a stage for neat lines, and more a market where time is bought and sold. The side that floods the stall with serviceable moments wins not because its machines are beautiful, but because they arrive again and again before doubt can finish a sentence. The enemy taught him that with plywood, with a radar cough that was good enough, with engines that sing because they are meant to be swapped, not worshipped. He writes the cadence last, so it will be the only thing a tired staffer remembers when the paper closes and the next night opens. Perfection can win a moment. Availability owns the night. And when the engines wake, seconds decide.